Yes. Yes. All right. Om Vang me manasi pratishthitam mano me vachi pratishthitam Aviravirma edhi vedasya maani stha shrutam me ma prahasihi anenadhitena horatran samdadhami ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Of course, I am coming from a bit different background, less academic and more engaged background. I'm more interested in the topic itself and how it changes our life and our psychology and our way of looking at things. So, to speak a few words, I will say a few words about myself. That actually I needed Sanskrit for the yogic studies. So I thought that without Sanskrit I cannot proceed, and I cannot really understand much of what Sri Aurobindo was telling us in his books, such as Synthesis of Yoga. All his books are somehow related to Sanskrit studies. Yeah, just look at this. Life Divine is built on the commentaries on Isha Upanishad. The Synthesis of Yoga, it's all Sanskrit literature. Savitri is a story from Mahabharata. Upanishads, what he published is a powerful book. Secret of the Veda, Hymns to the Mystic Fire, Foundations of Indian Culture. Just take any book and you will see that all of them are somehow related to the Indian tradition and literature. And he himself was a poet, a great poet. And prior to Sanskrit studies, he studied Greek and Latin and French and other languages. So he was a unique representative of Indian culture. So he studied his own mother tongue, Bengali, when he arrived already in India, and also Sanskrit. He did studies by himself, which is quite remarkable because when you see how he interprets the Vedas and the Vedic texts, with which he dealt all his life from the beginning till the end of his days. Already in 1949 we have his records of mentioning the Rig Veda and making interpretation of certain verses in 1949. So, and in 1950 he left his body. He already didn't do any writings, but still he was working on the Vedic texts. There is something about this vision of Sanskrit, which is so unique and so profound, which builds the whole Indian civilization as we know it, starting from the Vedic texts, without which there would be no Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, because they are all somehow commentaries on the Veda, on Samhita. Rig Veda Samhita is the foundation from which everything else follows. And all the Shastras, all the Vedangas, all the Darshanas, just name it, pick up one. They will be referring to the Vedas one way or another. Some of them will be arguing with Brahmanism, saying that it became very ritualistic, like we have in Buddhism, for example. Buddhism was denying Vedism because of Brahmanism, because of ritualism, which became void of the spirit, as Buddha saw. So, but it's quite interesting that all of the literature which followed refers to the Veda. And even Tantra, which is the closest to us, is considered to be the Veda for Kali Yuga, as they call themselves. So in a way, everything relates to this unique and beautiful literature of the hymns, of the most inspired poetry, of the most beautiful poetry, in the most sophisticated language. The language of the Veda is much more developed, as it were, or flexible or rich than any classical tongue, by the way, any classical literature. And that is, in a way, a puzzle, you know. How come that the Vedic language was so rich and the Vedic content, psychological content, was so profound? It's not just a religion, it's a psychology of universals, where all the universal forces of higher consciousness are being invoked for the transformation of our nature and human beings, and not only human beings, all beings. The invocation is happening to invoke these forces for transformation of the whole earth and the whole cosmos, to make it more suitable for the divine manifestation. That's why Sri Aurobindo refers to the Vedas constantly, and as he says somewhere, the Vedas were our beginning and the Vedas will remain our end. So this is something to think of, because Sri Aurobindo would never say such a thing in vain. He was very precise, very scientific. And he says that we only scratched the surface a little bit. What we know about the Veda and all what he did, such a profound topics he discovered. He gave us keys to how to read the Vedas. His works, the Hymns to the Mystic Fire and the Vedic and Philological, there is a new volume coming up, Vedic and Philological Analysis, Studies. The big volume, you can read what Sri Aurobindo did. His Origins of Aryan Speech, Secret of the Veda. It's a very rich and profound study. And after all of it, he says, we scratched only the surface and we took only the easiest part of this sophisticated system of knowledge. So what is this Sanskrit literature and why it is so important for the world and India especially? Because India is to recover its own origins, its own historical consciousness. That from the beginning of time there was an attempt in India to build up a higher civilization with higher consciousness, with a divine embodied consciousness. And it proceeded from the Vedic fundamental vision towards, through all the structures of consciousness, starting from the archaic, magic, mythical, towards mental structure, and we have already Sankhya and Yoga, which is much more scientific in its approach, and then finally Tantra, and we move into the modern age. So Sanskrit is like a red thread which connects all structures, all different ways of thinking, being, within one framework, within one language, which embraces all these structures and gives them kind of uninterrupted, unbroken sense of parampara. So we have a connection to the deeper historical consciousness. And it is happening only in India. It's the only civilization whose development was not interrupted from the prehistoric times. So why is that important? It is important because all these structures of consciousness are needed for the integral structure. They will all emerge at the end and will become efficient in building up our psychology. That what Sri Aurobindo calls that we are entering into the subjective age and into the spiritual age. And the role of India is here fundamental. So that is about literature. But today I wanted to speak about linguistics and India's contribution to the philosophy of language. You know that India is built on the power of the word. In Mahabhashya, Patanjali mentions one profound myth of creation of the world, which is where Indra was the first student of Sanskrit, and Brihaspati was the teacher who was teaching Sanskrit to the gods. So all of them came to Brihaspati, sat at his feet, learning from him Sanskrit. So Indra was his first student, and we know that Brihaspati is the Lord of the divine mind, the Lord of the divine word, and Indra is the Lord of the divine mind. So the Lord of the divine mind is learning Sanskrit from the Lord of the Divine Word. Can you imagine? What can be more significant? So, and Patanjali says Indra understood that even 1,000 years, 1,000 is the figure of speech, it means infinity in the Vedic terminology. Even within infinity, he will not be able to complete his studies. Because there is a reason, and it's quite interesting, and here I'm coming to the etymology, because every sound or word which Brihaspati was pronouncing, sounding that time, was actual in its power and meaning to that moment of time. So every time he pronounced something, it was real, it was true in that moment of time. So since he comes from the infinity, from the eternity, there is no end to that sound which would be actual to its own power. So Indra understood that he will never be able to complete those studies because it's infinite. So what he did, he stopped this flow of Brihaspati's speech, cut it into pieces, into grams, as it were, and created grammar. He could capture the sound which was actual, which was charged with meaning by grammatical means, by the mental categories of subject and object, by predicate and by time and space and causality, by the karakas about which I wanted to talk today, karakas and vibhaktis. He separated these sounds, shaped them into Varnamala, where all articulations could bring certain significances, certain general meanings, which together, combined, could build certain categories. So he captured the word by the mental categories, by the mind. Indra is the Lord of the divine mind. He created grammar which now separates heaven and earth, meaning and sound, artha and shabda, as it were. Artha and vak got separated, but they can be united only through grammatical structure. And it's quite interesting because when we listen to each other, if I will speak to you in Russian, for example, you would not be able to understand me. And not because of the words you do not know, but the grammar you can't recognize. You cannot put together the sound which would point you to the meaning. Yeah? And here I'm coming to this idea of Sporta theory and Vachya and Vachaka and signified and signifier, which was taken from Indian literature, from Indian studies into the studies of grammar. And Saussure was actually, Saussure was the professor of Sanskrit language, by the way, and his PhD was in Sanskrit grammar. It is not well known, somehow they don't speak about this anymore, but in those times he was actually teaching these subjects. And when they wanted to publish his general linguistics, he never published it. It was the notes by the students which was published at the end. He refused to publish it 3 times because he said he's not sure. I think he was quite honest. He didn't want to really speak about these issues as if it was his discovery, because he knew that it was actually taken from the Indian philosophy of language. And that is quite interesting, because this discovery of Vachya and Vachaka, separation of the meaning and sound and their unity in a way, created the whole direction of thinking. That's what's known as structuralism, post-structuralism, phenomenology is joining that party. And we have the whole direction of development in Europe, which was inspired by Indian literature, by Bhartrihari, by Tantra, by Patanjali. Patanjali was first who mentioned Spota theory, by the way. So it is just few references to the development in Europe. And with the discovery of Sanskrit alphabet, the whole perspective changed, because till that time they had only ABC, Aleph Bet. Aleph Bet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we do not know what it means really. Nobody knows why after A, B, C, D, it all belongs to the system of knowledge which was brought by Moses, and Moses codified his own mysterium, his vision, his occultist vision of the reality in his own way, which is not vocal way, it is not linguistic way of arranging the letters of the alphabet. These letters were the laws of existence, symbols in a way. So he symbolized, with alphabet he made the symbolic representation of his own system of philosophy or vision of the reality. And in that sense it was inherited by the Greeks, and then from the Greeks to Latin, and then to all the European languages. So all of them inherited this A, B, C, D, E, F, G without knowing what it really means. And that's why it was always confusing in Europe. There was never linguistic studies or really philology or any deeper knowledge or understanding how we articulate sounds and meanings until Sanskrit was discovered. And once Sanskrit was discovered, kha, kha, ga, gha, nga, all back tongue, cha, cha, ja, chana, all the palatals, tat, ha, da, da, na, ta, ta, da, da, na, pa, pa, ba, ba, ma. You have 5 vargas, you have 5 levels of articulation, all possible articulations. This knowledge was stunning for the European scholars. They could never imagine that we could have a systematic view on all sounds, which is so normal for Indians because they grew up with this knowledge. It's kind of inbuilt in their thinking. But it wasn't the case in a European tradition. So once they discovered that systematic articulation of all the sounds, the new topics are coming and the new disciplines were born. Comparative philology, Indo-European languages, general and theoretical linguistics, all of them come into being with the discovery of Sanskrit. And the father of linguistics, we can call Humboldt. Humboldt, who was actually a very high figure in Germany at that time. So at the beginning of 19th century, Wilhelm Humboldt, I'm meaning, not Alexander. So Wilhelm Humboldt, he spoke, he conversed with his students in Sanskrit. He knew by heart Gita. He learned Gita by heart. We don't know about this because it's something which is not promoted nowadays. Yeah? It's not no more fashionable to speak about Sanskrit influence somehow. And in that way, of course, if you think how much Sanskrit contributed to the development of the whole range of new subjects, humanities, social sciences. I'm even tempted to say that the whole phenomenology is taking a different turn because of that structuralism and view on Vachya and Vachaka, signified and signifier. And we can see it in the Derrida's writings. It's all there already present, Heidegger. So it influenced the European civilization directly from the core, from the very how to say, deepest conceptual view of our language. Language is the key. Language is how we think. Language is how we use and understand ourselves and the world, how we interact with each other, how we communicate. So linguistics is actually a major subject of all the humanities in a way. Philosophy is built on the usage of language. Psychology even is built on the usage of language. Our understanding is built on the usage of the word. So that Brihaspati's word is still there, and Indra, with his structural mind, putting it into perspective, using it and developing it. But now, from now on, once Indra hijacked the Brihaspati's word and put it into his own perspective, separated it, meaning and sound, and now combines them in his own way, from now on, every word, any word, or any sound can be applicable to any context. That means from now on we can lie. Before there was no possible to lie. Brihaspati's word was always true. And now with the application of grammar, you can apply a certain word to certain context where it is not applicable. So what it means, actually, if you look into Sanskrit language, you will see that there are no such words as lie in Sanskrit language. There is only asatyam or anritam. That means not satyam. That means truth is not applicable. Notice, it's beautiful because it means exactly that there is truth. You say the truth, but not for this context, not for this time, not in this space. So it is applicable to some other space or time. So the word is always authentic, always true, always Brihaspati's word. But it is applied in a different context. From here, all the ideas of dharma and adharma. What is adharma? Is a misalignment, misuse, misplacement of truth. If we find the proper place for every true usage, then that is dharma. If we misplace it, it is adharma. So it is not applicable. Okay, that is about the beginnings of thinking of the connection of the word and meaning. And that creates the whole direction of thinking, Spota theory. How the meaning is being revealed in speech, through what means. And there are grades of, starting from Varna Spota, revelation through the sound, meaning through the sound, till the Vakya Spota, revelation through the text, and Pada Spota in between. So there are disputes, there are discussions, there are different directions of philosophy taking place through these different theories. A very rich environment. And that leads us to the need of etymological theory. And by the way, Sri Aurobindo was nearly the first who connected the meaning and the sound in the psychological way. And I want to maybe read from his quotation, from his what he writes about this. I don't see it now, sorry. I lost it somewhere. Wait a minute, I will find it. Here it is. So Sri Aurobindo says, law and process must have governed the origins and developments of language. Given the necessary clue and sufficient data, they must be discoverable. It seems to me that in the Sanskrit language, the clue can be found, the data lie ready for investigation. We can find an equal regularity, an equal reign of fixed process on the psychological side in the determining of the relation of particular sense to particular sound. And this is fundamental. Particular sense to a particular sound. And from there he started. He started to examine our articulations. He discovered, and it is quite discoverable for all of us, then when we articulate sound, we make a particular effort, which is reflected in our system as a particular state of psychological state. If I make an effort to articulate E sound, or U, or A, E, U, there are three different attempts, three different states of consciousness. With E, I am pressing with the tongue towards the palate. With U, I create some kind of fullness within myself. I feel as if I'm pervading the space within myself. And with A, I do not do anything. So his definitions would be quite interesting. Look at this. Let me read these definitions. The four first simple vowels, A, I, U, U, and Ri, indicate the idea of being, existence. And why the idea of being existence? Because vowels are infinite. Yeah, they are not like consonants. They are not stops. They are not sprishtas. They are not like ka, ka, ga, ga, which exists only in one touch. But A is infinite. It has no beginning, no end, as it were. So these four indicate the idea of being, existence. A, in its short form, indicates being in its simplicity without any further idea of modification or quality, mere or initial being, creative of space. And it's quite clear because A, no tongue, no lips, nothing is involved, only vocal cords are sounding the sound. So it's just the idea of simplicity of being, initial being, creative of space. It creates space by very vibration, but it is not modified, it is not modulated by any quality. There is no quality in it. It's undifferentiated state of existence. Let us say Sat, the being as such, pure being. E, if you try to modulate it, you will articulate it, you will feel that you have to press the middle of the tongue, to the top of your palate. E is an intense state of existence, being narrowed, forceful, insistent, tending to a goal, seeking to occupy space. So it is like an arrow flying to hit the target. It is the narrowed down, intensive state of existence. It's as if it is paying attention to it, like root chi in the chi chi ji ji ni. This chi root is to gather, to focus, to fix one's consciousness upon one point, one-pointedness. And even in Latin they write E with like one line and dot on the top. Yeah, because psychologically it is that intense state of existence being narrowed, tending to occupy the goal, the space. And then U. U is a wide, extended, but not diffused state of existence. It's very charged. It is pervading the space within, being medial and firmly occupant of space. Yeah, and we can see it everywhere where we have Uru. Uru is wide. Yeah, everywhere Udaka, water, the same etymology in the European. It is something which is firmly as a substance occupying the space. Wide, yeah, vast, all these words you can see. Ri is a vibrant state of existence, pulsing in space, being active about a point within a limit. It's like it's drilling, it's crushing, it's breaking. It's constantly that which you find in all other Indo-European languages and in Sanskrit also. So if you analyze the very substance of these simple vowels, and then you come to the consonants and combine with the consonants, you will see a very interesting picture that Sanskrit is irregular in the change of sound and meaning. First of all, just open the dictionary, Sanskrit dictionary, and look into the words. Word after word, article after article, the meaning is changing gradually. It's not jumping. So as sound is changing, the meaning is changing. Step by step. So sound and meaning are corresponding in a way. And that makes Sanskrit a unique language. Yeah? And Sanskrit is unique in one more regard, that it does not require any other language to explain its own derivations. It refers to its own system of roots, etymons, simple root sounds, which generated other roots, generated other words, and many, many derivations. And these are simple. The simplest system of etymons is Sanskrit alphabet. Ka, kha, ga, gha, nga. And then I would say chi, chi, ji, ji, ni instead of cha, cha, ja, ja, nya, because E is more natural for palatals. So I will combine it with a palatal vowel. And then pu, pu, bu, bu, hu, mu. So ka, kha, ga, gha, nga, chi, chi, ji, ji, ni, pu, pu, bu, bu, hu, mu. And these would be first simple roots. And if you start analyzing them, you will be surprised that E is moving, constantly moving. Chi is noticing. From here, chit, consciousness as noticing. Chinoti, chinute. And chinoti, causing, focusing, piling up. From here, chitti, as piling up. And also chitta as noticing, focusing, one-pointedness. Yeah. Then G to conquer, Shi to sharpen. You would feel all these meanings with E, and which is narrowing down, focusing, making it sharp. Yeah. And if you go through all the roots, you will see that everywhere it will play that particular varna, or that particular color, that particular flavor of meaning, of general meaning, will be in all the roots and all the words. You can feel it within the body. You can connect to it in the very meaningful way. And that explains why we have, for example, synonyms in the language. Because synonyms is nothing but different roots from different sounds. We are arriving at common meaning in the Indra's way. Yeah? If I say big ocean or immense ocean or huge ocean, these are all different words. Yeah? Big ocean and huge ocean, poets feel it very different. Poets would never use big ocean where it is not applicable. They would say huge ocean. Why? Because huge has this extension. Somehow we know about it. How do we know that big is heavy, bulky, and has no space, and huge has space and extended? We know it through Brihaspati's speech. Brihaspati's speech is still alive behind our consciousness. It is still being activated by Indra every time we use our language. And that is the contribution of Sanskrit. It's a profound contribution. Connection to the original meanings, to the deeper meaning within ourselves. We can recognize it. It becomes alive in us. And as Sayana would say, those who know Vedic mantras, they bring to birth the gods, because these powers of the divine consciousness are standing behind these vibrations, and they become alive within our being and extend our consciousness. And that is the linguistic approach to Sanskrit. I will stop here, and then we'll invite any discussion. It would be interesting to speak about it more. Yeah, please. Yeah, it's quite interesting. If you take Ramayana, for example, and you will notice an interesting thing. If you read the Ramayana, uh, after one page of reading, all your troubles will be gone, all your psychological anxieties somehow disappear. It's a magic thing. I noticed this many times, and I notice also when I want to indulge in my, kind of anxieties and my problems, I cannot read Ramayana because when I start reading, it disappears. And I want to continue to be worried. So if you want to get rid of all your worries and you just read that fluid bliss, it is just within the language. It does something to our consciousness. And I must tell you that I never had better experiences in my life than by reading Ramayana, for example. I'm totally taken by it. When you read it, it's like you get the most profound, the deepest experiences in yourself. I am sitting there laughing like an idiot, crying like it's all there. There's such profound emotions inherent in all the, and how it is inbuilt. It's quite interesting how people react to what Rama does. Yes, Rama is never described as something like, but it is described through attitudes of others, how they relate to him, how they love him, how they totally, accept him. And it's amazing. I just everywhere, in every way, Um, and how he reacts, how he thinks, when when he hears this, that he has to leave the Ayodhya from Kaikeyi, and he bows to her and says, "Mother, why you are worried? It's my honor to follow my father's, promise to my father. He gave you the word, and I will fulfill the word of my father. It's an honor." He doesn't see anything in it, but when he comes out, first thought comes to him is, well, could I tell this to my mother? You could see that he is concerned with totally different issues, and it is rebuilding your psychology. It is teaching you how to be totally dharmic, totally true to yourself. It's profound. It's deeply moving, and especially, when he goes and the whole Ayodhya moves with him. They all came for his coronation, and now instead of coronation, they all move to the forest with him. You can't imagine such a tragedy. It's so, it's the top of all possible visions you could have. I don't know any other literature that could give this vision. And then when he runs away and the chariot comes back and people are still waiting, well, he already crossed the river, and empty chariot comes back, and they're still waiting, hoping that he will come back. And when they see the chariot, only then they start lamenting and crying. Empty chariot. These elements, simple elements, they are inbuilt into such a deep psychological truth that move us to the end that one cannot really find it in one's own life. Such events. My life is very poor in comparison to what I experienced by reading Ramayana. And that is Ramayana, and there is Mahabharata, and there are Vedas, which is out of any comparison. But by the way, Sri Aurobindo puts Valmiki on the top of the list of all the poets. He makes the comparison of all the poets. Valmiki is in the first place, then Vyasa, then Homer, notice, and then Shakespeare. These are the first four, according to Sri Aurobindo, poets. But Rigveda, Vedic rishis, he doesn't even put on this scale. They are beyond. They are in the second range. Yeah, there is Kalidasa, the second layer. He is there. Well, Sri Aurobindo himself was a poet, great poet. If you read his Savitri, you would see what a profound poet he was. We speak about it as the fifth Veda, even Savitri. And in Savitri, he uses all the imagery from the Vedic literature, by the way. All his, the fire, the sun, the wind, the mountains, rivers, all this imagery he took from the Veda, the word. I had my studies, it was actually my research for 3 years, which was funded by Indian government, by the way, for 3 years. And it was the research Vedic imagery in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. What I discovered in Savitri, Savitri helps us also to understand the Veda, because he gives these psychological meanings there, which when you look into the Vedic texts, suddenly they explain each other. So you have two systems of knowledge which help each other for us to understand. Yeah? To understand the Vedas without Savitri is quite difficult. To understand Savitri without Vedas, nearly impossible. But if you put them together, you get a new possibility. Right. Of course, I am very interested in the Vedic studies. Yes, please, go ahead. Absolutely. By the way, Sri Aurobindo says the same way as you are explaining, in a way, that the first language was more on the level of feeling. Feelings were driving the sound, the feeling. Look at how animals are communicating. They also have languages. They have their own speeches. They can speak. And birds, or you can even recognize that this bird is in trouble, or that bird is happy, or something is going on. Somehow we can even read to a certain extent. Or the dogs are barking, they are angry or they are happy. The body language is also language. So there are many languages. And of course, if we come closer to this idea of how we communicate, as it is expressed in Kashmirian Shaivism, what is this Pashyanti Vak or Madhyama Vak and Vaikhari Vak, we will see that Pashyanti Vak is that kind of like aha moment or something, like intention comes to us. Oh, I have to do it. I know it, but I don't know yet in terms of how to express it. So I have to dress it into language. So I invite language, whatever language I invite. It may be Sanskrit or English or art or music or mathematics or dance or gestures of the body. But I have to express that meaning which came to me. I want to dress it and to express it to my surface consciousness. It's what is happening is very interesting. We are communicating from within to without, and until we make that connection, that bridge, we can't understand totally what is happening within. So it happens to us once in a while that we can say few things which are becoming meaningful to us also. in a surprising way. Oh, how come I said this thing which is now makes sense much more than I meant to say. So when my surface consciousness, surface mind understood what it is being communicated from within by the word, brought forward, formed into the language that my surface mind could now capture it or could bridge to the inner being, then that communication takes place. And we are communicating to our surface being and to others at the same time. So I am myself a surface being. I am the other to whom I am communicating from within. And this is the marvelous part of language. We are learning from our deeper self. And that's why Svadhyaya was so important in India. Svadhyaya was the first way of dealing with the text. So you take the text and you read it to yourself silently, observe with your mind the flow of the text which you know perfectly by heart. You read to yourself, and then something happens. There's like with Ramayana, something happens. People go watch movies. They come out and they all cry. Why? Why do they cry? Because between the meaning and sound, between the presentation, between the surface understanding and the inner understanding, there was a bridge. There was an intensity, an experience. And on that, the whole Indian civilization is built. Yes, please. Yeah, make comments. Oh, there are. Well, Om is Om. It's how we pronounce it in the Veda, but Aum, how we pronounce it is in Tantra. Indian tradition is at least known to us, at least 8 or 10,000 years old. Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure it is just underestimation of Indian tradition, because Tilak speaks about 6000 BC. He found evidence in Taittiriya Samhita. If Taittiriya Samhita is 6000 BC, then what to say about Rigveda Samhita? Yeah? So, what time it belongs to. And they are speaking about eternal things. So, Indian tradition is very rich, very long. So, there are so many ways of pronouncing sounds, and there are so many varieties, so many dialects. In Sanskrit itself, as you have so many places in India, you have many Prakrits. Yeah? All these Indo-Aryan languages came into being from Sanskrit somewhere. And how did they come into being? By certain modulation, certain mispronunciation here and there. You know it very well. You can recognize each other, how you speak, from what region you are coming, because this is a particular way of pronouncing sounds. Yeah. Well, about meters, yes, it's a profound topic. Sanskrit, Vedic Sanskrit is not in the quantitative so much, but you have a varieties, definitely. You will have different varieties within the same Anushtup or Trishtup or Jagati. You will have, instead of 12 syllables, 11 sometimes 13. Instead of 8, you will have 9 and sometimes even 6, because of some prasaranas. So you will have certain modulations and modifications, which you will have. They have their stress to udatta, anudatta, svarita. Anudatta points towards udatta. Svarita is pointing that previous was udatta. Udatta is the stress. So, yeah, yes. Yeah, by the way, on the accent, one can say a few things, which has to be recovered, I think, in India nowadays, because these Anudatta, Udatta, and Svarita is the way to preserve the text, was the way how to record the text with the proper Udatta, with the proper morphological accent in the word. So to preserve that accent, because each word has a particular accent, yeah, it is in the flow of speech we recognize words by their accentuation. If I shift the accentuation in the flow of English language, you would not recognize my English. It would be some other abracadabra. So we select words by accent. We know this as linguists. So that's why we have this satisfaction, this particular accentuation. Yeah. Otherwise, it would not be understood. If I shift the accent, you would not hear the word in the flow of speech. So what happened in the Vedic Sanskrit? It was accentuated by the Vedic accent. So what happens when you have udatta, which is the highest accent, you need to lower the pitch in the previous syllable. Otherwise, how would you make the high pitch in the next syllable? So how would you make forte if you don't play piano before one note? So to make it forte, to make it high pitch, you need to lower the previous, and that is anudatta. And once you raise the voice, it's interesting. So satisfaction. So once you raise the voice, the next syllable will be falling pitch, and that is svarita. Now, the anudatta, udatta, svarita is low pitch, high pitch, and falling pitch. And that is how Vedic rishis used to mark the accent. Not only by one accent, they noted that the lower pitch is there before the higher pitch is coming, and then the falling pitch is taking place. So they made these markings to help us to preserve the text in the proper accentuation. And this is a very important issue. We don't have time for it, but it could be, we could find some other time for discussion, for this discussion. Yeah. I'm fine. No, no, no. It's morning for me, don't worry. It's morning here, 10 o'clock. I have the whole day. Please go ahead. Sure, yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. This penetration, this penetrating sound, you can find it everywhere in all the words, in all the roots, how the roots are built. If you analyze the roots, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time. I could show how this meaning is maintained with this piercing, this needle piercing. You can see it in all Indo-European languages, this kind of action of movement and penetration, and of course you're right. You can see it in many roots, and the first root is E, to move, to go, and what is to go, to move? It is, if we imagine the background in which everything is static, nothing moves, and then suddenly you notice something, some change, and that change is actually that what needle, or that shift, or that, yeah, some yeah. Is it me who is making noise? Yeah, 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 thank you. So, of course, if you start analyzing the sounds and the roots, and especially if I take, for example, the set of roots such as bha, bhi, bhu, bhri. I take bh, and then I take bha, a, bhi, e, bhu, u, bhri, and analyze the meanings, how the meanings shift. You will see immediately the meanings of the vowels. Bha is to shine, to appear, to be everywhere without any obstruction. Bhi is to shrink, to be afraid, to come back to yourself, not to expand, but to shrink. Bhu is to penetrate in space, to occupy firmly the space, as Sri Aurobindo describes. And Bhri is to bear the same bhri, the same etymology, to 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 sustain one's own effort within the limit. And this is quite interesting. I'm just applying the general significance to the sounds, and you can see throughout the roots, not only bha, bihi, buhu, bri, ma, mi, mu, mri, any root you take, any consonant with these vowels extended, and compare them, you will find the same shift of the meaning. So the vowels really bring that significance powerfully forward. So E is narrowing down, whereas R is as it is without any modulation. E is narrowing down, U is expanding and occupying, and Ri is within the limit, like drilling, breaking, crushing. Yeah, all these words, notice, they are all having, even in English language, in all Indo-European languages, you will have that dri root, yeah, or kri. You will have that crushing or breaking significance, working within the limit, drilling through. I'm just leaving you with these sounds. So they are Indo-European meanings. Yeah? And Sanskrit just utilizes them in the best way, in the most regular way. That's why it has power. When we speak Sanskrit language, it has power because of that, because of its purity in sound. Purity, meaning and sound are well connected and well maintained. I do not know whether it answers. I kind of went vast a bit. Yeah. Definitely, that mantra has a particular sound content, and it works within the sound also, especially in the Vedic sense, in the Rig Veda. Rig Veda is very subtle, very sensitive towards what root to use, what word to use. It is like poets. Poets are choosing their words carefully. They feel that this word is not working. Yeah? Big will not work here. Great will not work. How do they know? Immense will work. Immense ocean when we want to show the extension, or or a huge ocean if you want to show the. But big is bulky, but huge has an extension. How do we know this? We know it from the sound. From that sound value, which is inbuilt in us. We are very sensitive, very intuitive about it. Because when we articulate sounds, they create particular significance within us. It's a particular power within our psyche. And Sanskrit utilizes this very well. Well, it builds on this property. So this apparatus, if our apparatus would be different, if it would be, I don't know, dolphins, we would generate different sounds. Yeah? But since our apparatus is such that we have the caves, the nasal cave, the palate, the teeth, the tongue, so this setting, this notice 5 I put on my face, that's all possible articulations in all possible ways. Incredible system of the articulatory devices with meaningful sense of them, which generates words, roots, which can be true to its own sound. That Brihaspati's sound, the Brihaspati's word, is still present in Indra's articulation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
A wonderful lecture.
Thank you. The hand, what is this? Oh, svaras, or you mean the Vedic accentuation? What is the purpose? Right. What is the use of the hand? The hand helps us to bring it into the physical consciousness, not to forget. It's one more system of correlation, yeah, which helps to not to forget. Even if you forget the sound, the hand will remember, so it will help you to. And of course, there were many ways of learning the text. There are different modalities. You can read the text in many ways. Yes, you know this. Thanks. From how the text was learned, the text was not learned by just learning one hymn. Not Agnimihile Purohitam. There are many ways. You start with one word and first word and the last word, then first, second word, last and last word. So and you come to the middle. Or there are many ways, many malas you combine with the words until the hymn is totally memorized and you can't ever forget. And by the way, this is a very interesting feature of Sanskrit tradition. When European scholars came and they collected the texts from different regions of India, from the north, south, middle India, and you have your teacher has teacher, you don't have time to travel to the north and check how they recite the Rig Veda. Huh? You are in your village, your Gurukulam is there for thousands of years, so you learn from your teacher and pass knowledge to your student. When they compared the texts recorded from all sides of India, They were stunned because these texts were identical, nearly identical, without any drastic modulation or modification. That means something, huh? That the system is so perfected that the system of oral transmission is much more perfect than transmission through written word. Because usually when they were writing, these were the boys, who were rewriting. These were not, so they were making mistakes, few rewritten texts, and you have so many mistakes. But oral tradition has no mistakes. That means we are dealing with authentic text over thousands of years. And it's, of course, it's a great gratitude and thanks to this Brahmanic tradition, which keeps up with this even today. Even nowadays, they learn by heart these texts and transmit them by heart. By the way, in Aitareya Brahmana, there is a prohibition for those who study the Veda by heart to write it down. So it could not be written down. It should be transmitted only orally. That was the responsibility of the teacher, to choose the disciple and to transmit to him this knowledge. Responsibility, it's a high responsibility. It's whom he chooses as the vehicle for this knowledge, for transmission. It's something to think of. It's not just text written and then it is burnt, as Alexandria library was burnt and nothing is left, and nobody remembers nothing. In India, this knowledge cannot be burnt. It is in the memory of Hindus. It lives in their hearts. Yeah? So. Mm. There are many bija mantras which also can't be explained. Hrim, Klim, Gum. And Gum is more connected with Ganapati, I think. And it kind of creates that foundation of, like solid foundation on which it can be held, something. It's a psychological more than semantic. Well, psychological and semantic, as we saw, they are going closely together. So there is no kind of scientific answer to it, that why, but yeah, but it makes sense when you do it, and it supports the mantra, and it holds your consciousness well focused, and as it is said by Sayana, once the mantras are sounding in the consciousness of the speaker, the gods vibrate and becoming born in his consciousness. It is the way to bring to birth the Godhead within yourself.
Can we say that these mantras have no dictionary meaning, but they have that particular sound frequency which is used in them?
Yeah, it is in a way close from that general significance of Brihaspati's word, all more derived and more articulated in terms of grammar. Indra's language is coming into being. Indra is the first grammarian. The Vyakaranam is called Aindram because Indra is the creator of grammar. He created the forms of the language, of the words, suffixes, prefixes, Varnamala. Everything is created by Indra for the sake of putting it together, using it for the sake of using the power of the sound in the meaningful way and being able to apply it to any different context. Not only to a particular context where it is totally true, but in the context where it is not true. So it may create the truth in that untrue context. Being optimistic, I am. Yes. Well, the whole yes, this Dirghatama Uchatya has a beautiful long hymn with many mantras there explaining these four levels of speech which are coming into being, to which we refer as four levels, as Paravak, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari in the Tantric tradition later. And these also, the four Shringas of the Purusha, are actually those four levels of speech, actually. And there are many references in the Rig Veda, but they are kind of packed in the form of the for the initiated. Yeah, it is not kind of explained. The Rig Vedas are not trying to explain things. They're indicating some mystic knowledge to which you have to have an access. And once access is given to you, either by the teacher or initiation or by the grace, you just this meaning is revealed to you. Then you can see that what he is speaking about, why she is of four, Chatushpadi and Ekapadi, and what does he mean by all this? Ashtapadi, Navapadi. So what is all these padis? Yes, the speech. Why she is on one leg and she is on four legs and then on 8 and on 9. Who can really say? Yeah? But if we look into it deeper, if we start analyzing, it is a topic in itself. I would love to have this linguistic discussion. Maybe some other time when we have more time for this. But I would like to give you a kind of more elaborate answer, or what I think about. Because I thought about this quite a lot. What are these four levels of speech? And in Tantra they are well known. But how it is in the Veda, how they view it in the Veda. And also Patanjali, how he deals with it, and how it shifted towards more mental structure of consciousness. Because Patanjali is already speaking in a language which is closer to us. He says that Varnas do not have meaning by themselves; they have meaning only in the morphema, in the word form. That means we are shifting towards mental structure of consciousness. But there was Varna Spota before, where the Varna itself has a meaning. And that's what I was trying to speak about, that why big ocean and huge ocean are two different oceans, because of the content of the sound, yeah? And not because of anything else, but because mentally these are two similar concepts, big and great and huge. Yeah? From the mental point of view, there is not a big difference, but from the point of view of the sound, articulation of the meaning, And because of that, the flavor of the meaning, and because of that, the very meaning is very different. So huge and big are two different meanings, though for the mind they are very similar. They are synonyms. Yeah. Yeah. Sure, sure, lovely. Would be very happy to do it. Yeah, we have class on. Mhm. Mm. Yeah, I was mentioning that there is a class on etymology. There is also the ongoing sessions on hymns to the mystic fire in Sri Aurobindo's interpretation, which are profound actually. And there we also look into etymological meaning of each word, why rishis are using these words and not those, and what it really means in a deeper sense, in the sense of Brihaspati's word, not in the sense of Indra's word. Yeah. So, how that vibration is needed to convey that particular meaning which Rishi wants to convey. So, it's more kind of work on etymology. And we had very good sessions on etymology with a group with Anuradha. Anuradha brought the whole group of students and scholars. So we had 10 sessions on just overviewing the etymological approach to Sanskrit language. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. Mhm. 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 Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, with me, it's the whole day in front, so don't worry about me. Yeah. I think you have to worry about you because you're already in the night somewhere, 10 o'clock or something. Yeah. Right, that's a provoking question, yes. Right. Sound is always, yes, there. Right. Thank you. Thank you for these provocative thoughts. And yes, it's rather thoughts rather than questions. So they have no answers, of course. They are just there for us to keep them forever and to try to figure out through our life what it really means. Yeah. There are no answers like answers given which could be satisfactory or one, yes, but you are right. Absolutely, the sound is living, and it is the ongoing consciousness which is expressing itself in new forms. And there are many languages. A Sanskrit language is perfect. It's a Sanskritam. Yes, it is perfected. It is made totally mm, holistic, and it's an instrument of perfect consciousness through which you can present a higher consciousness without distortions in a way. But even there was some development, and we can see over time from the Vedic Sanskrit to the modern, there was a development of particular kind, though the language is the same, which is unique because language doesn't live longer than 500 years. Take any normal Prakrit language, in 500 years it changes in an unrecognizable way, you know. But Sanskrit maintained its identity from the immemorial times, from prehistoric times, the same language till nowadays. So even if we modulate nowadays, Sanskrita Bharati speaks more spoken language, still it is the same Sanskrit language. You know? It just selection is a bit narrow because we are so utilitarian nowadays that we have no time to really express deeper truths. We have to only be, active and proactive in doing things, but still it is the same language, the same power. It bears the same power. And every time we pronounce, we use this language, it vibrates and it connects deeper layers of our consciousness. It connects us to the origins of our speech. That's the power of Sanskrit. And that's why Mother in Sri Aurobindo wanted this language to be the national language of India. Yeah? There was the whole movement, the whole movement in India to make it national language of India in 47, 50. Ambedkar, he was moving everywhere. So there was, in the India lost, there was a vote, only one vote was more over the vote that Sanskrit would be the national language to India. Only one vote. Yeah, Sanskrit is totally what you write, what you speak, you write. There is no more, there is no modulation, modification, because it is perfected in a way. There was an anecdote. Maybe it's good place to mention it when all the Ambedkar and everybody came to the minister to say, let us promote Sanskrit and make Sanskrit national language of India. He said, but where do you see Sanskrit nowadays? There's nowhere Sanskrit today, so why do you come with this idea? And there was one Muslim in the group, Muslim who was promoting Sanskrit, by the way, a Sanskrit teacher. And he said, sir, may I suggest something? He said, why do we have lion on our emblem of India? Let us put donkey. Where did you see lion nowadays? Donkeys are everywhere. So this is something about Sanskrit. It brings some higher level in the nation. Vivekananda said, if you want to raise your level, learn Sanskrit. This is the raising of the level of consciousness, and it will be understood and will be valued in India only, that Sanskrit level of consciousness. For the linguist, it's very important to understand the perfection of this language. Yes, very big yes, capital yes. Definitely, this understanding of the of the value of articulation and the meaning putting it consciously articulating sounds is the way to conscious speech. Unfortunately, we speak a very formal, very structural, very mental language, very conceptual. Concept itself is already void of meaning. It's a mental formulation of some kind. It's a mental representative. It's not really the real living being. To make it living being, you need the sound, the value of sound. And that is the poets. We should be all poets from now on. We have to learn to compose through the sounds, articulate through the powers of sounds and meanings of sounds what we want to communicate. Since we communicate on the surface, it's not so important when, we're just like... But if we want to communicate deeper realities, deeper connection, we need this knowledge.
Hello, am I audible? So I would like to first thank Dr. Vladimir. It was an amazing talk. I was hooked on to every single word. Thank you so much. I just have one question. We have always heard that Sanskrit had an impact on Western European languages like German, as well as there's a lot of talk about this. But I've never had the opportunity to ask about the Eastern European languages, in particular Russian. So, how much impact or influence would you say that Sanskrit as well as Indian philosophical traditions had on Russian evolution or Russian way of
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, well, way of life I can't say, but language-wise, yes. All Slavic languages, Slavic, notice, Shravas, Slavic. And this is exactly the same etymology. Shru, sluchать. Slavic is from Shravas, from Slovo. Slovo means word in Ukrainian and Russian and Slavic language. Slavic itself is from Slava, Shravas as fame, and Shravas as the word, because word and fame go together. So these are very close in every way, and they have a huge percentage of words. Most unexpected words can trace their origin to Sanskrit.
Thank you so much.
Right. Ukraine is Uktriani. You see, Ukrainians were called in one manuscript as Uktriani. There is one manuscript which nobody understands where it comes from, 17th century. It's written Uktriani glagolемые брахмани. I'm citing in old Ukrainian. Uktriani glagolемые брахмани, островицы, мясо не едяши, вино не пьюши. So I translate. The Ukrainians, Uktriani, they call themselves Brahmanas, Brahmins. They don't eat meat, they don't drink wine, they offer to their gods with flowers and honey. This is a quotation from the text. Nobody knows where it comes from, why it is there, how to deal with it. What kind of Brahmins are there? Uktriani. But then if you look into this Uktri, you will see that Uktar, Vaktar, is a Vaktaram avatu, avatu mama, avatu Vaktaram. It is that Vaktar. And it's Vaktri, Uktri, yes? And from here, Russian and Ukrainian Учитель, Учтель. Tel is three suffix, and Uch is Vach, weak form, yeah? So it's incredible if you think. Учитель means the teacher, the one who carries the word. So Uktriani are the carriers of the word. They call themselves Brahmani. And Brahmana is the one who carries the word, because Brahman is the word. The first meaning is the word, not the spirit. The spirit comes later. Brahman is the word. Brahmanaspati is the one, the Lord of the word. of the hymn. So you can see the connection. It's rather not sound, it's more language or the word. Yeah? The word can be expressed not only in the sound way, but also in a gesture, in the movement. There are many avadhanas in India. I was making this film on Ashtavadhanam. I would recommend you to see this. This is really something. There are avadhanis in India who are playing these, avadhanas. Yeah, I will not speak about it because it's topic in itself. So I attended Shatavadhanam, and also there is Sahasravadhanis who have this 21-day composing 1,000 verses on the spot. But there are other avadhanas like Netra Avadhana, where you can communicate through look. You can say through how you look, or gesture, or so there are many languages which can be used, and dance is one of those languages. Great. Mm.
Thank you, Anuradha ma'am, for this opportunity for asking question. And with Dr. Lagbe, it was wonderful talk. And I really like how beautifully you explained the effect of Ramayana on your mind. Suddenly, all the problems vanishes.
Mm.
I just wanted to know more about your experiences of reading Mahabharata as compared to Ramayana, since both are very different type of story with very different character. Like Ram is totally black and white, and on the other hand we have Krishna, which is like in a gray area sometimes. So, is there any difference you feel while reading both the texts in the in your emotions? Like, does it calm down like Ramayana, or like it forces you to what type of emotions you experience while reading?
Thank you for this. This is it's yeah. Vyasa is very different from Valmiki in a way. Vyasa is more sophisticated in language. He's not so smooth like Valmiki is smooth. He's flowing. It's he's taking you by something else. It's some kind of higher flow of consciousness or something, and he adds to it. He is not surprising you with shifts. The Vyasa is more. It's a surprise in each shloka in a way. Somewhere there is always something, and even in Indian tradition they believe that he was doing it because Ganesha was writing down. So to rest a bit, because Ganesha said he will stop writing down the Mahabharata if he will stop speaking. So he was composing in such a way that Ganesha was puzzled what it means, and before he could figure out what it means, in that moment, Vyasa could rest a bit, So that was the way how it was done, and there is some truth in it, truth in the usage of language, definitely. Valmiki is just he takes you by the heart, something. It's going straight into the heart. And Vyasa is more like an of a mental consciousness, something vast and huge and complex and philosophical and profound, and the whole story is profound, many-faceted, very puzzled, many puzzled stories. Savitri is the story of Savitri, Markandeya speaks, or the whole, one after the other. One is better than the other. So Valmiki is more like a one flood of uninterrupted, like Ganga, inspiring you in every way, in every turn, in every word. Vyasa is more sophisticated, like he takes you through the mountains, through the valleys. You have to climb and fall and this and that. Yeah, I do not know whether it answers, but it feels like this. Yes, you're welcome. Absolutely. If you listen to the recitations of Avesta, especially the oldest parts, you would not make a distinction between the Rig Veda and Avesta. You will be surprised. You will say that this is Rig Veda and that is Avesta. That's much I want to tell you. You have to listen to it, to recitation. That's true. It's very close. Especially the Gathas, the oldest parts of Avesta. But Asura in the Veda is not Asura of the. So Asura is the great being from root as, to be. Asura is the one who possesses the power. Indra is Asura, Varuna is Asura. Everybody is Asura. Agni, they are Asuras. But why? Because the Asu is the power of life, of being. And then later it becomes Asura, not Sura. So there are two different words, Asura with Shotu and Asura with Longu. So with not light, with no light. And so these two are different words. I think it was the beginning like this, and now it is developing, and I don't think it will stay only as against everyone. Of course, there is the Proto-Indo-European languages, definitely. And Sanskrit is the origin because Sanskrit refers to its own system of roots. If it would be not so, of course, there was some development. There is always some development. From Vedic to classical, you can see the development. But it is not a drastic development, So it's not something which you cannot recognize the language. It's just richer in the grammatical and other forms. Regarding the Dravidian origin, and Sri Aurobindo speaks about common origin from Dravidian and Indo-European or Sanskrit origin, Vedic. So Vedic and Dravidian were one long ago. And we can see it once in a while here and there in the old words such as Amba is Amma becomes. So we have many indications, Appa from up, root. So he points out to some unknown past where they were coming from one origin. And then they, of course, deviated. Dravidians went one way, and Vedic development, Aryan languages went other way. So you can find this also interesting that in a Vedic language the prefixation is free from the roots and from the verbs, and prefixes can be found in any position before, like for example, griham gacchati. Yes, you can say he goes home with separate from gacchati, or you can say even griham gacchati yeah, at the end. So prefix had its own accent. It was a separate word, which points us to the Dravidian languages where there is no prefixation at all. Yeah? There is a root and many affixes. So in that sense, agglutinative type of Dravidian languages is some kind of development from some origin where the prefixation was free. And we can see also that agglutination is also found in the more in the Veda, especially these endings like bhyam, bhich. They were treated in the terms of external sandhis as separate words, which came together. Well, I don't want to go into grammar too much. Thank you.